All right, guys, we're back with another Market Monday. We're going to be looking at all the cards that went up, down, and the top sellers for the month of February. All right, to start us off on the cards that are going up, we're starting with Maui Shark. Maui Shark is up 5% so far, and that's pretty big because this card is already an expensive card. So it's up $2.31, taking it up to $46.36, one of the most expensive cards in Lorcana at the moment. Again, outside of Enchanteds and things like that, but the card is good. The card's going to continue to be good into the next set, even with some of the changes we're going to get with, again, Popsicle Bell, all of that going on. But I think a lot of people are still going to be looking at this deck because it was so good this past set. The next one on the list, it's a little bit of a surprise. We've got Alice Savory Sailor. Yeah, she's up 28%, probably one of the biggest jumps this week outside of the 4-cent cards that go up 2 cents, you know. But essentially, she's up 62 cents, taking her to $2.21. I think this is one of those cards with potentially this blue deck with Bell and Popsicle people are experimenting with. They're looking at Alice to give her ward and be able to kind of continue through it. It's a good card. She's popped up here and there. A lot of talk about her this past set, but didn't really show up anywhere. But I think at this point, people are experimenting with her, and this card could be pretty good in this upcoming set. All right, so next up, we have Jasmine. We talked about her a little bit last week. Yeah, I know, corrections, comments down below from last week. She's not a pirate, even though she clearly looks like a pirate in this card. But this is just still one of those cards I think a lot of people are speculating on, especially this green-blue deck that's starting to arise, which doesn't necessarily use her specifically in the list that I've seen, but could use her in those lists. Again, talking about the hero list where you shift hero, and any cards that have been shifted now have ward and evasive. Pretty good combo. So this could show up in the deck. And this week, she's up another 8%, which is 22 cents. And now she's at $2.51. Again, this is a legendary, guys. They're a little harder to open. Yes, we have some, you know, cheap legendaries out there, but for $2.50, she's a pretty good card. She is pretty powerful in what she does. You're just going to have to kind of build around her, which may or may not make her that good for the deck, just depending on how you're going to be building her. Next up is Calhoun. Calhoun is up 5%. That's 55 cents and up to $11.70. This is probably, again, one of the better rares, probably maybe even one of the best rares that are out there in any of those kind of low to the ground decks, or just needing a good threat on 2. Her resist really keeps her around on the board and always makes it to where people are not going to want to tap out their smaller characters to give you the extra 2 lore. So the card in general is a good card. This, in my opinion, is probably eventually going to get to kind of that $8 to $10 mark. She's only a little over 10. This is a good price if you don't have them. I don't expect her to drop anytime soon. Her, you know, chart is just continuing to go up. But there is kind of a cap there because it's a rare card. I don't see this going up to 15 or more. You know, that happens early on in the release, but I do say this card is going to stay around this point for a little while, unless she just kind of comes out of all the decks, and that's the only time a card's really going to drop hard. All right, so next up is Clarabelle. Clarabelle is up 7% this week, so that's $1.56, taking her to $22. This card at one point was mid-30s, something like that. But I think right here is a good price for this card. It could go up a little bit more. And we talked about, again, this blue-green deck, and she really is a really great card in that set. She can come down either on a smaller Clarabelle or a morph in that deck, and she's going to draw you cards when she does because you're going to be, you know, going through your ink and going through all your cards pretty quickly. So this is a card that does have an upside, can go up a little bit further as the set comes out, especially if you find out that that blue-green deck ends up being one of the top decks of the format. And if that's the case, this card could go up another $10. So just be aware. I'm not saying it is going to, but that deck is really strong. And I hope to have some kind of deck tech play around that, hopefully next week, as we'll be opening up our product on Friday as we go to Disney Springs. All right, so we have a surprise guest here. We've got Donald Duck Buccaneer. Yeah, this card kind of had a lot of hype around it when it was first spoiled. Really didn't ever do anything because we didn't have enough pirates. But again, we're gaining a lot of pirates in this next set. And this could potentially bring the Emerald Steel Pirates up. So Donald's up 15%, which is 46 cents, taking them up to just about $3. So $2.98. Again, cheaper side when you look at legendaries. But if that deck ends up being a really good deck, this Donald could go up a couple more bucks. And so that brings us to Belle. Belle, we talked about last week. She's still continuing to rise. Again, I think a lot of people are hyping up Belle in this next set. She is a pretty good card, but just remember she is a 3/3, so there are a lot of cards that can remove her. And be on the lookout if something like Blue Steel comes back into the format, Smash will be a card. So be aware of Smash. You know, along came Zeus, things like that can take her down. But this week she's up 20%. That is $1.56, taking her over $8. Again, on the pricier side when it comes to Lorcana cards in general, there's not many cards that are above $5 in each set, but she is starting to rise and continuing to rise. So we will see if she makes her mark in this next set, in the next format. And if she does, again, she has some room to grow. But as of right now, she is kind of on her all-time high outside of spoiler season when she was spoiled. So we'll see where she goes. All right, so taking us back to the old school, we got Be Prepared. It's a card that's been around forever. It's going to be around forever, and it is on the rise. So 18% jump this week. That is $2.27, and that takes it up to $12.19. This is, I've said this a lot with this card. It's a $10 card. Now we're at $12. As we go over time, this card will just continue to go up. We continue to get more new players into, you know, Lorcana in general. And after we have our world championships and all of that, and they announce the next DLC, be prepared. There's going to be a lot more people coming into Lorcana. So these set one cards are going to start to get harder to find unless we get some kind of reprint out there. And again, as of now, we really haven't heard anything about reprints. So just be aware these older cards that are staple cards like Be Prepared do have an, you know, ability to continue to go up if they don't get that reprint. All right, so that's taking us over to the cards that are going down this week. And Baymax Armored Companion, this is one of those cards that a lot of speculation has been around. He really hasn't done anything this past set, but he's always stayed over $10. So it's an interesting card. It's down 12%, which is $1.52, down to $12.30. Still a little bit of a pricey card to not really see too much play, but with the next set that's coming out, there is a chance he could always pop up. There's a lot of blue speculation, like we talked about earlier with the Bell Popsicle combo. I know. I don't know how well the combo is. I don't love the combo. It's powerful when it's powerful, but outside of that, I don't know. We'll have to see. But because of all that speculation, it is driving up the blue cards, and some of these other cards that maybe aren't going to fit into that shell are going to start to come down, which I think is what we're seeing with Baymax here. All right, so next up on the list is Lilo, Escape Artist. Again, we talked about this card last week. She's on the way down, and I really don't see her recovering too much because of the fact that it's going to be super easy to get her promo in the next set. If she's in the little gift set, she's a really great card, which is really the first good card that's been in any of the gift sets. A lot of the gift sets out there, yes, they've had great art and things like that, but they've really picked cards that just aren't playable. Whereas this time around, we finally got a really good playable promo, which means the normal card is going to just tank because of the fact that everybody's going to want to know, you know, get the new shiny card with the new border, Lilo. So Escape Artist, she's down 19%. That's 72 cents. So she's down to $3.67. She's very playable. So if you have them, great cards to have, but just keep in mind, this version is going to continue to drop over the next few weeks, especially as the new set drops on Friday and everybody is opening them. And yeah, so sorry, Lilo. Hopefully at some point you recover, but I think because of that promo, you're definitely going down. Next up is Genie Wish Fulfilled. So again, Genie Wish Fulfilled. This card skyrocketed in price for a while as it was being put in every deck and replacing Rabbit and things like that. It was an answer to Diablo, but as Diablo's kind of fallen out of the format on a big level, you really don't need him over Rabbit in most cases. So a lot of people are going back to the Rabbits. Because of that, Genie's down 3%, not a huge drop, but that is 27 cents, taking him down to $8.29. So again, this card was like $15, almost $20 at some point. At this point, we're down to $8. I think that this card settles between that $5 to $8 range, somewhere around in there. Kind of what we got with Rabbit. It's a little different than Rabbit because he was in the starter decks, so you could find them pretty easy. But this card is definitely always getting split between himself and the Rabbit. So I think that that's really what's affecting his price as he kind of settles in to where he is. All right, so next up is Sisu Empowered Sibling, down 10%, which, you know, when you have a big expensive card, means big prices even with small percentages. So 10%, we've got $2.56 off of the price, taking her down to $23.32. So this is just a big card. It was used in a lot of decks in the past, with red and blue kind of shifting towards the shark. This card kind of went down to like 1 or 2 in a deck. She's always usually been 2 to 3. So because of that, her price is coming down because she's not a 4 of, but she's definitely dropping. I don't think she's going away completely. She's definitely a really good card. And with Coil, Sapphire Coil being a card out there, I could see Sisu's making a rise again as you ink a card, and now, you know, your 3-drop Sisu can take stuff out, or this one right here. So, you know, over time, I think this one's going to recover a pretty good bit, but it may be over the next week. She maybe goes down a little bit more, but just be aware there is a chance she could start going back up as people start experimenting with more of a control blue-red. Again, not a Maui Shark style deck, but more of a control deck, because being able to ink multiple times on a turn with Coil could really make this Sisu crazy board wipe. And again, we saw those Be Prepareds going up. So just be aware. All right. So on the other hand, we've got Ursula, Deceiver of All. She's going down, and really, I think she's just going to continue to go down. She's down 19%, which is $2, taking her down to $10.59. This card is a really, really good card, but you didn't really get any crazy cards in this next set, making it to where you'd want to play her to do the double sings. With that Diablo double discard type style deck going away, or at least going really, really lower in the format, it's making me think Ursula is going to have a tough time sticking around in the format. She's still a great card, and I'm sure there's some stuff you can do, but a lot of the cards we got in this next set are actions rather than songs. So yeah, this card probably is going to go down another couple dollars before she stabilizes. But the good thing about this card is, you know, with any set, they can print some kind of crazy 2-drop song or 3-drop song, and then all of a sudden she's way back in the format. So just keep that in mind with this card. But as of now, she's going down, and I don't see her recovering over the next few weeks. Next up, Beast Tragic Hero. This card is on the downslide, down 9%, which is $2.65. So it's taking him to $28.42. This card bounces all over the place. When he's in the format, he goes up to $30 or $40. When he's not being played, he jumps back down to $25. So this is one of those cards that has its ups and downs. He's always a playable card, always in the format, but he's not always necessarily tier 1 in the format. Again, if somebody comes out with some kind of Sapphire Steel and needs him for draw, then he's a good card. Outside of that, he kind of gets put back to his $25 mark. So this may be a card to eyeball over the next couple weeks. If you don't have your Beast, this could be a decent time to pick him up as he gets closer to that $25 mark. I don't think he's ever going to go way below that unless he gets reprinted, because he is the only card in set 2 that has any value outside of Strength of a Raging Fire. There we go. I was trying to think of the card. But yeah, outside of those two, the set really doesn't have any big priced cards, so he can't go too low. At least that's my opinion, because you got to have some value in the set. But is definitely one of those that you may want to keep an eye on because he could drop a little bit more before he finds his way back into the format, which he does every single set. All right, so last week we looked at the top 10 selling cards for the week, and this time I want to do something a little different. Inkborn Heroes put out a list, so big shout out to those guys. If you haven't seen their content, definitely check them out. But they put out a list of the top 10 selling cards for February. So all the sales for the entire month of February. I thought it was really cool to see these cards and see what's kind of going on there. So we're going to be going through that list and seeing what cards sold the most over on TCG Player. So again, this would be North America. And so at number 10, we have Big Sisu. Big Sisu doesn't surprise me with the blue-red decks that were coming around. You had Sisu showing up and even some of the red-purple decks that were there before Maui Shark, took over the format. So this card doesn't surprise me. Again, it is a 2 of, so people probably weren't picking up huge play sets, but definitely a card that if you didn't have, a lot of people were having to pick up to be competitive this past month. The next one is Beast at number 9. Beast, again, just one of those great cards. We talked about him earlier as he's kind of going down in the past week, but this is just a staple card. He's been around since he was released in Rise of the Floodboard. He's been in and out of many different decks. Anything that plays Steel pretty much has him at the top end, so you can get at least 1 or 2 cards off the draw from him. So again, really great card at number 9. Number 8, this is an interesting one. So this is Spirit of Winter. I'm not sure if this is specific. I'd imagine it's not to the Enchanted one, but maybe it is because of the market value here of $845. So I'm wondering if, being a huge top seller, this is just people trying to get in there and buy this card up. Again, not sure how the stats are, if it's specific to the Enchanted version or Elsa in general, because Elsa in general did get a little bit of a boost in a few of the decks working on the top end. So talking about like the green-purple decks and even some of the purple-red decks had, a 2 of in the top end. So maybe some people wanted to, bling out the deck and get the Enchanted version. Maybe it's just people trying to buy that card up as it was a little bit cheaper. And yes, this card is not very cheap, but it is one of the most expensive Enchanted, so it will go up over time, and maybe that's what we also saw this past month. Diablo, again, kind of one of those cards that's going down a little bit right now, but Diablo being number 7 makes a lot of sense. Again, popping up in a few different decks here, but the Diablo deck itself that we were seeing from like Zan and some of those guys was on the downslide towards the end of February, but we do have to remember at the beginning of February, it was still a really good deck. So it does make sense that it was one of the top sellers. Number 6, Strength of a Raging Fire. Again, this card's crazy. It's $13 as a rare. There's not a lot of rares that are that expensive, but it does make sense as it is a 4 of in any deck running Steel. It is your premier removal in that color. So it doesn't surprise me that this sold so many copies. Not knowing what the other 5 are, it surprises me it's a little bit lower on the list. I would have expected this card to be at maybe number 3, but I do have a feeling we're going to see something like Maui Shark in the top 5, so we'll see as we continue. Number 5 is Calhoun. Makes perfect sense. We're still in that Steel. We just saw that Calhoun is going up. And again, this card is probably going to continue to go up for a little while, probably another $1 or $2, something like that. But yeah, really great card. Showed up in a ton of decks. Now that I'm thinking about Steel, we'll probably also maybe see Doc on this list. Again, I haven't seen this list. We're looking at it live. But Calhoun, pretty good card there, number 5. Doesn't surprise me she's in the top 10. Really doesn't surprise me she's in the top 5. Clarabelle. Yeah, Clarabelle, a lot of people started buying Clarabelles here for the green-purple decks to give you a little bit of card draw as you started to run out of gas towards the mid-game with the deck. This one also could be potentially, once we got our spoilers, a lot of people looking at that blue-green deck. She's going to be pretty much a 4 of in that deck. So this card does have the ability to continue to go up like we talked about earlier. But number 4, a little surprising because I didn't see as many in February. But again, this could have been towards spoiler season. A lot of people started buying or picking her up for that as well. Robin Hood. This is a card we haven't talked about in a while. Little surprising, it's up at number 3. I could see him being in top 10, especially, again, really great card. Maybe because his price came down. Again, that $25 mark makes these really good playable cards an okay price if you don't have your play sets and things like that. But Robin Hood, always a really good card, but is a little surprising because I just don't feel like I saw him that much in the meta over the past month. But again, maybe just his price drop. He went from around the 30s down to 25. So I could see some people picking them up just with that price drop. And we'll have to see. There's definitely going to be some type of Steel Song deck in the next set. So we'll have to see if he ends up being in Steel Song or if he kind of drops out of the meta. And if he does, he could go down a little bit further. All right, so number 2, Rapunzel. Rapunzel's always there. She's, if you look at her week over week over week, she's always going up some type of percent. She's up to $52. Again, this is a little bit of a surprising one. I think it may just be because she's first set. Everybody wants to get them. You don't see her outside of any type of Steel Song type deck. I guess maybe she's in like the Mufasa deck and a few other random decks like that. She's a really good card. Don't get me wrong. She's a staple. I've got my play set. I'll keep my play set. I don't think I'll ever get a second play set because I don't see this card ever really going down. But it is surprising she's selling so much as the number 2. But again, maybe she's also just got a really big fan base around the card. I would love if there's potential, if Inkborn, you're watching the video, if there's any way of knowing like how many numbers were sold for each of these cards, that'd be great to know. If you have that data, somehow you have them in the number order. So it would be cool to see how many copies were sold just to understand, how much more Rapunzels are selling than something like Robin Hood. Number 1, Maui Shark. This one makes perfect sense. Pretty much the number 1 deck of the past format. I'm sure it's going to continue on into the next format, but the number 1 card, Maui Shark, we talked about him earlier. He's continuing to go up. He is really that tier 0 deck. Potentially could continue, like I'm mentioning, into the next set. But hopefully we'll start to get more cards being played to put him in check. I mean, along came Zeus, things like that can definitely take him off the board instantly. And that's a card that kind of fell out of favor. But maybe with Purple Steel or something like that, making a comeback over time, or even Steel Song, we can keep the Shark in check. But yeah, number 1 seller for the month of February makes perfect sense. And again, big shout out to Inkborn Heroes. Big thank you for putting this together for the public so that we can, view it on here and keep up with those top selling cards. So with that said, guys, this is the Market Monday for this week. We will be back next week looking at the Market Monday, and maybe we'll start to look at the next set cards. I try to steer away from a little bit until we're opening cards because every card there is going to be overpriced on week 1. But maybe next week we'll get some value changes within that. If not, the following week we'll definitely start to look at the set. But I like to give it a little bit of time, a little bit of breathing room before we start looking at the next set, just to make sure that we're looking at real prices around that. But maybe next week we'll start to see if there's any cards out there that are a little cheaper to look at right now. But as of now, I look through the list and pretty much everything's overpriced in my opinion, which is what we see with every set. So we'll have to see. But if you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit the button down below. You hit that like, you hit that sub, all that stuff. We're going to be having these every Monday, plus other videos coming out. So definitely tune into the channel. Appreciate all you guys for supporting the channel. Until next time, I'll take it easy.